Hey y'all, thanks so much for clicking on this video today. I have 3 Dollar Tree DIYs that are all farmhouse inspired. For this first craft, I've got this mason jar sign that I picked up from Dollar Tree back last summer during 4th of July. Had a couple of stars on it that were raised up, so I went ahead and pulled those off. These were not easy to get off, so I had to use a staple puller to get that off. But I'm gonna go ahead and prep this sign. There's quite a bit of glitter on a lot of these Dollar Tree seasonal signs. So after I take off those stars and take off the plastic and everything, I go ahead and grab a sanding block, which can be found at Dollar Tree as well. And I just go ahead and sand the majority of that glitter off. Once I have that done, I turn it over and I use this blank side. And I decide to get some scrapbook paper. And you guys, I've probably had this scrapbook paper for like a solid 10 years. I don't even know why, but that's not why it's yellow. It actually came that way. But I've had this for a super long time. So I thought it would be cute to Mod Podge it to the front of this sign. It wasn't quite big enough, so I had to piece it together a little bit, but I was really planning on putting quite a bit on this mason jar sign. So I wasn't really worried about it looking funny or anything like that by piecing it together. So just so I didn't have to like trace it out, I just kind of ran over it to kind of mark the areas that I wanted to cut off to fit it to size. So once I had the scrapbook paper cut to size, I took my Mod Podge that I got from Walmart, which can also be picked up at Dollar Tree. It's just smaller containers. And first I'm gonna put a coat of Mod Podge on the actual medium, on the actual sign, and then spread it out using a foam brush. The foam brush, I typically get them from Dollar Tree, but you can get them from Walmart too. But I do a very light coat to start. And then I go ahead and take my scrapbook paper and put it over top. You can take a credit card or any kind of card and kind of get those bubbles out. And then I put another coat of Mod Podge over the top. Now, I put way too much Mod Podge over the top of this, and that's why I ended up having bubbles, which you'll see at the end. But just when you do this particular part, with anything that with Mod Podge, always do a light coat so that you don't have any bubbles or as least amount of bubbles as possible. So I wanted to get some scrap wood out of the garage. My husband had built this desktop and had actually cut a piece out of it. I don't know why. I don't know if he was planning on coming back to this, but it's mine now. So it was 2 pieces of wood together, which you could use just a regular Dollar Tree sign and it would work just as well. I just wanted it to be a little bit thicker. So he did stain it like a dark walnut, and I didn't want it to be as clean or dark as it originally was. So I just took my hand sander and went over it a couple of times. You could do this with one of the sanding blocks from Dollar Tree as well. But I just thought this was like the perfect size for the project. So one thing that did suck was that every piece of this wood was coated in the stain. However, this one edge was not. So I didn't want to break out the stain. It was super cold outside. I did not want to be out in the garage any longer than I had to. So I just took some of my antique brown chalk paint and mixed it with some water to make a stain. I also had some screws to pull out. They were hanging out on the other side, but they were kind of nicely put in there with his little Craig thing that he has. So I just screwed them right out. So as you can see here, this stain that I made did not even match at all. So I did do a few coats over this to try and get it darker to match. I wasn't really too concerned about it, honestly, but when I got done, I just sanded that edge as well, just like I did the rest of the wood here. So now my scrapbook paper is all dry on my mason jar sign, and there are a lot of bubbles, but it's okay, it didn't really bother me. What did bother me was the edge. So what you can do if you do a project like this is just take a sanding block and go over those edges, and it'll make that piece fit a lot nicer. So then I wanted to take and add to the edge or the neck of the mason jar. So I took a little bit of jute twine, you can get it from the Dollar Tree, took some hot glue and just glued the end to the back and just wrapped it around until I was happy. So at this point, I'm ready to glue the mason jar down to the piece of wood that I have. And I'm gonna be using both of my glues. I'm gonna use my hot glue gun for a quick hold, and then my liquid Gorilla Glue for a longer lasting hold. So this part here is totally optional. I always take a lighter whenever I'm using jute twine, and I'll go over it just to get off the like little fuzzies from it. But if you do this step, just be really careful. And if you're not comfortable, then just don't do it at all. So here I was going through these little wood letters that you can pick up from Dollar Tree. They are super cute. It only comes with 26, so if you need to spell something out that's going to take 2 of the same letter, make sure you get a couple packs. But I figured I'd do the word grow here, and I didn't want to be straight. I was trying to get it to where it was like curved. I didn't really do that great of a job, but it's on there, and I knew that I was going to add so much stuff on here, it probably wouldn't matter. But this was the word I went with because I'm going to be adding some stuff, and you'll get it towards the end as to why I chose this word. But I couldn't leave them the way that they are. I wanted to go ahead and give them a coat of paint, and so I chose the ink Waverly chalk paint here. For the next portion of this project, I got these, they're like metal flowers that you can just stick in your flower garden, obviously during 4th of July, but I thought it would be cool to spray paint these and make it look like they're coming out of the mason jar on the project. So the spray paint I'm using is, and I hate that I didn't show it to you, I will show it to you here shortly, but it is a hammered gray, I believe. But it gives this like hammered metal look, which is really, really cool. I think overall it took maybe 3 coats to like fully cover these. So I did like 2 or 3 coats over the front, and then the back, I think I just did 1 or 2 coats, but I just wanted to make sure nothing showed through on those. And then I'm not painting the whole stem, and that's just because I wasn't planning on using the whole stem. I was gonna cut the majority of it off to fit the project a little bit better. So after 2 coats, I remembered I had this little spray paint gun, which is made by Rust-Oleum. I picked it up from Amazon.com, I believe, and the brand of spray paint is Krylon. So I had never used this little gun before, but it came in so handy. So it's a lot easier to spray the spray paint. I have really bad carpal tunnel, and after just 1 or 2 coats, my hand starts to hurt. So this thing is awesome, and I didn't get any paint on my fingers, so definitely worth the investment. So once I have all of the flowers painted, I wanted to kind of fit them down in there, and there was like a little gap that I could just shove them down into. Also, I completely forgot to film me making this bow, but I took maybe 6 to 8 pieces of jute twine, cut them all the same length, and then just tied a bow. This is the jute twine that I got. This one I got from Amazon, which is a lot thicker. The Dollar Tree one is a lot more like thin and frail. I as you can see here, the difference. And it's not much to get it off of Amazon, but if you choose, you can get it from Dollar Tree as well. So before I did anything more with the flowers, I decided I wanted to add some beads to the strands from the bow. And I just so conveniently had this metal skewer because I cut the stems off of the flowers, of course, to fit them better. So I'm just taking these wood beads that I got from Amazon. I got a huge bag, which I'm completely obsessed with. And I just put them on this like metal skewer so I don't get paint all over my hands, because of course I wanted to paint them that ink chalk paint so that it'll match my words on my project. And then I'm just showing you here where I cut some of the stems off. You had to work it a little bit, but I've got these wire cutters that work really good. I don't really know what else you could use to cut it. It was pretty sturdy. It took some finagling to get it cut. And because I wrapped that jute twine around the mason jar sign, I had like a little gap in there where I could actually stick the flowers down into. And then I only glued like a little piece of that flower just to hold it in place, because once you shoved them down in there, they kind of stuck. So then, because I wanted my flowers to look kind of like aged galvanized metal, I took my Waverly chalk paint. I have the colors, I think that was truffle, and then ink. I took this chippy brush. I'm not quite sure if you can get those chippy brushes at Dollar Tree or not. I'm pretty sure I got mine from Walmart. But I just took a dry chippy brush and first dabbed it in one of the colors and just kind of went over each flower, and then went back with the second color, and it gave like a really nice galvanized metal look. So now that my flowers are done, I'm going to take my wooden beads here that I have on my skewer, and I'm going to paint them the Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. So now that I'm done painting the beads, I'm going to go ahead and start putting them on the jute twine. Now this jute twine, as I showed you guys earlier, is a lot thicker than the one from Dollar Tree, this one from Amazon. So a little trick I learned was take some Scotch tape and just tape it around the end, like as tight as you can, and it makes those beads go right on. And this is the finished product. I ended up hanging this up using a sawtooth hanger that I was able to just push into that wood. All right, so on to our next project. I wanted to make something that looked like a picket fence. So I picked up these painter sticks from Walmart. I've never seen them at Dollar Tree. I ended up cutting two of them, and I used a hand miter saw, which was not fun. I will never do that again. I was just being lazy and not wanting to go out to the garage. But I got these painter sticks. It's 3 to a pack. They're 97 cents a pack, so they're not bad at all. And I just kind of line them up to get that picket fence look. Once I get the look that I'm going for, I go ahead and take the two that I cut and connect all of them together. I then go in with my Waverly white chalk paint, my favorite, as always, Waverly everything. And then of course I cannot wait for this to dry because I'm so ready to see the finished product. So I have my heat gun here that I got from Amazon, just drying this a little quicker. So of course I want to give it a distress look, so I get my Waverly chalk paint in the color Steel, I believe. And then I also have my Waverly in Truffle, I believe this is. And I'm just going to use a chippy brush, a dry brush, and dab just a little bit of each color all over this fence to give it a nice distressed look. So then I pick up this home sign that I got from Dollar Tree. It is a solid wood sign. And I took my Waverly paint and truffle and mixed it with some water to create like a stain look over this. And this is the finished product. I also ended up taking this wood like wreath form that I got from Dollar Tree, and I just left it the way it was. I hung it up with some jute twine and then glued that home sign to it. I love the way this turned out. I ended up using Coke tabs off of a Coke can and glued them to the back so I could use them as hangers. So for my last project, I ended up getting this pizza pan from Dollar Tree. And I cleaned it off. You don't see it in the video, but I did clean it off with some rubbing alcohol just to make sure I had a nice surface to paint on. So then I ended up finding this chalkboard paint at Dollar Tree by Craftwise, and I was super excited. This is the first time I've ever seen it. I'm sure they've had it before, but I ended up picking this up, just one thing of it. And I've got chalkboard paint in the garage, but I just didn't feel like mixing it and doing all of that. Plus I just wanted to try this out. So it really only needed one coat. This stuff was super thick and it went on really nicely. So once I got done painting this and drying it with my heat gun, I decided, like a crazy person, that I would take some of these wood beads and I would go glue them all the way around the edge of this pizza pan. And I really instantly regretted it. I did think it turned out nice, but it was a lot of work. And I think I would recommend using super glue. They sell it at the Dollar Tree. I think it even comes in a 2-pack. But the hot gun was just a pain. And a couple of my little balls came off before I finished the whole project. So I would definitely use something different. This was just a lot of work, honestly. So then once I'm finally done gluing all of these little beads on, I get my carbon paper that I got from Amazon and my press tool. First, I take some chalk and I season, quote unquote, the chalkboard. This is supposed to help whatever you put on here stay better or write smoother, I suppose. I don't know. I just see everyone else doing it, so I was doing it too. So I just went over the whole chalkboard and then wiped it off. So I wanted to put some words on here, some leaves, flowers, something. So I printed this off and I just kind of pieced it together with tape until I was happy and thought it was going to fit on here nicely. And then I just kind of position it where I want it, tape it into place, get my carbon paper, stick it underneath, and trace over it so that I can see through, to use my chalk paint pen that I got from Dollar Tree to write over it. So I kind of had to hold the sign at an angle, just at like the right light so that I could see, because obviously the carbon is going to transfer dark and I'm already working on a dark medium, but you could still definitely see it if you just held it at the right angle. And just so you guys are aware, this chalk paint pen from Dollar Tree, it's okay. This is the second time I've used it. You have to be really careful because it's really easy to bleed. And you see how like some of my writing is lighter than the other parts. So I end up trying to go back over it and I end up making a little bit of a mistake, which I fixed, but I don't plan on buying this again from Dollar Tree. I'll either stick to a Walmart brand or Hobby Lobby or something else. I just didn't really think it was that great. And this is the finished product. I ended up also gluing a Coke tab to the back of this to hang it up, but I'm thinking about getting some ribbon and maybe using that as a hanger instead. Those are my 3 crafts. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe and leave me a comment and let me know what was your favorite craft.